Hello and welcome to this short video explaining postmodernist view of culture, identity and socialization. So postmodernism is a view with many different thinkers and arguments. The general argument is that society has changed. Some thinkers argue to a new era, and some argue that it's still the modern era, but in a kind of advanced stage, or late modern or high modern stage. So those who argue we're in a new postmodern era, like Lyotard, argue we live in a media saturated society, where there's the compression of time and space, according to Giddens, as a result of globalization, with the sharing of greater connections and information and interactions globally, economically and socially and politically and culturally. This creates the sense we live in a global village. So in terms of consumer culture, postmodernists would see this as a normal part of life, where we see ourselves as consumers more than producers or workers. Pekulski and Waters argue class is dead because occupation and how we work and how we earn money and even what we own has become less important. Property has become less important. Job has become less important. How much money has become less important compared to new identities and new forms of division, such as consumption, such as how we choose to spend our money. So it's become more normal to identify with a brand, a label, an image. The idea that there is a hyper-real or hyper-reality by Baudrillard is the argument that the image of a product does not sell the product itself, but it sells the lifestyle and the kind of norms of values and the narrative or story surrounding the product. For example, with Coca-Cola, it sells the image of living, drinking, sleeping and eating, football, for example. So it's associating the product with something more than just this vegetable-based drink, but with a lifestyle based on activity and fun and exercise and so on. Another example is Nike with Just Do It, that kind of branding representing lifestyles based on choice and individualization very much supports the idea of postmodernists, that we live in a society where we have greater autonomy, greater sense of freedom over our lives. Giddens talks about postmodern or late modern society as being like a juggernaut out of control, where pollution, unemployment, changes in terms of instability of family life and relationships, creates the sense that with modernity we have rapid change, but with a late modern society we're in a stage where change is continuous and accelerating faster than ever before. New technology, new choices. Ulrich Beck has talked about society as a risk society in the contemporary era, where we're constantly assessing risk. We have more information, more awareness of the possible consequences of our actions. So while at the same time we've got choice, we've also got uncertainty. So our culture is very diverse. We've got no sense of what way of life is better or worse. Zygmunt Baumann talks about the Holocaust, and he argues that modernity, the characteristics of modernity, rationality and efficiency, are found in the Holocaust. In a postmodern era, because of the Holocaust, because of pollution, because of secularization, there is this sense that there are a diversity of competing narratives or stories to explain the world, none of which have priority, none of which seem to be the dominant ones. that fits in with the concept from Lyotard that we've seen the death of grand narratives or big stories about the world, such as Marxism, the fall of communism in the Eastern Bloc. That doesn't seem to hold true. So some thinkers have even gone so far as to argue that we've come to the end of history. That capitalism is the way of organising life and the economy, which seems to have been more popular than other types of ways of organising life. In terms of popular and high culture, these divisions are breaking down according to postmodernists. So this kind of blurring of boundaries in terms of the division between Shakespeare and the X Factor. That border is kind of no longer clear. There's a mass consumption of popular culture, but that could include any group from the elite to the poor. In terms of cultural diversity, some postmodernists like Madoud argues that multiculturalism is the answer in terms of celebration of difference rather than segregation or integration. We can celebrate peacefully and coexist and be different together, different from each other within one society. Cultural hybrids, according to Bra, we've got this process where we have new, unique forms of identity which are created from diversity, such as Brasian, British Asian, so a combination of old forms. And so postmodernists generally argue that class, age, gender, ethnicity, disability, these kinds of identities, in terms of socialisation, we have got structures in society in terms of limitations, but we also have a sense of individual choice, and both structure and agency operate at the same time, which makes society complex and difficult to understand. So the older views like functionalism and Marxism are seen as outdated because they offer a grand narrative which often focuses on a one-dimensional view of the world, like feminists, patriarchy and Marxist capitalism, economic factors, which tends to ignore the complexity of the range of economic, social and cultural factors which explain identity and behaviour.